Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Thursday, the 4th of February lesson, which is all about retelling a narrative from a different perspective because throughout this week we have been rewriting our own version of Little Red Riding Hood, but we've been writing it with a twist. We're not writing the famous sort of child's story of Little Red Riding Hood. We're taking a different slant on it altogether. We're writing it from the wolf's perspective, and in our version, actually, it's all been a lie. This story of Little Red Riding Hood, it's just a fabrication of the truth. Actually, what happened wasn't what's told in the famous story. So that's what we've been doing through this week. And just to remind you, on Tuesday, I put there thinking back to that fateful day. So the wolf should have been sat somewhere in his, I don't know, in like a cottage in the woods or somewhere or wherever he lives, thinking back. He's an old man now, thinking back to the past when he met Little Red Riding Hood. And then in that bit, you sort of describe the opening, the surroundings, the forest, the wood, and the idea that Little Red Riding Hood, she's been sent to Grandma's for whatever reason. I used the one from the actual original story that Grandma was ill, okay? And then yesterday, what you did on Wednesday was Red and the Wolf meet for the very first time. And what should have happened there is some sort of interaction between Red and Wolf that's different to the one in the original story, that basically she's not nice. She's a devious little and quite scheming. She's what I refer to in the story. I think Wolf refers to as a bit of a nasty little brat. So that's what happened yesterday. And in my story, Little Red Riding Hood, she is the evil one, and Wolf. And we're writing from Wolf's perspective. He's just a nice guy. He's just a good guy. All right. And where that should have finished yesterday was that Wolf was off to Grandma's house. Not like is told in the famous story, to go and eat Grandma. No. He's going to Grandma's house to basically inform her that her granddaughter is not the very nice person. Okay. Today, we're going to write the ending. All right, which is going to be, and I'll model to you how I'll do it, and you can watch that, and you can use some of those ideas. But like I've said to a few of you, be creative, do it in your own way. You don't have to follow exactly the same sort of style as I've done, but it might just help you with a few ideas of how you can write it, and I'll model that in a bit. And then what we're going to do again is we'll finish Friday with a reading lesson as normal. So through this week, you'll have written the full story, you'll have drafted it all out. And Monday we'll do, seems to work quite well last time, Monday we'll use as an editing, improving and publishing lesson for this Little Red Riding Hood piece. So you can actually over the weekend have a think about any ideas you've got for how you're going to publish that final version. I hope you're enjoying it. I'm enjoying writing it so far. It's quite a nice, different sort of thing to do. And summarising that, so we're present tense, thinking back, that was the start, once upon a time, sitting in the forest, in the woods, and there was this evil brat named Little Red Riding Hood. And then yesterday was all about Wolf and Red Riding Hood meeting for the first time. And obviously in our version, she's vile, basically. She's absolutely vile to him. So today we're going to do these parts here. We're going to meet at the cottage, and I'll go through how I'm going to do that one, and then maybe finish with a bit of a go back to the future again, and sort of Wolf saying something about how he feels about things now. After everything that's happened. So in the original, just to summarise what happens at this point, Wolf arrives at the cottage, and what happens in the child's version, in the sort of a fairy tale version from when you were younger, when you might have read it. Apparently he eats Grandma, and then he tricks Red with the old, oh, what great big eyes you have, all the better to eat you with, and all those things. And then he eats Little Red Riding Hood. And then in the fairy tale, Wolfcutter arrives. Wolfcutter saves the day, and they all live happily ever after. And poor old Wolf, he's seen as the bad guy, he's seen as the villain. But what we're saying in our sort of year 6 or 5 version is that is not true. As Wolf says there, it's just a lie. Not in our version. That's not what happened. This is all a fabrication of the truth. I've got a bit of a structure strip for you today that you can follow. That might help you keep your structure. This is what I'm going to use for my writing. So I'm going to say we're going to arrive at Grandma's house. We will speak to Grandma. It'll be quite a pleasant conversation. We'll explain what happened. We're quite friendly with Grandma because we're quite a nice guy, aren't we? We're a nice wolf. We're going to speak to Grandma, explain our plan. And then Red's going to arrive, just a bit like in the story. I'm going to include a bit of that sort of scenario where Wolf does the what big eyes and what big ears and what big teeth and all of those things. But not in a way to actually eat Little Red Riding Hood, just to play a little trick on her. I am going to have the woodcutter arrive But then I think I'm going to have Wolf sort of leave and Scarpa off, and then what's actually told in the stories is not the real truth, the one that everyone knows, the famous tale. That's not what happened. Okay, and I'm going to write about that at the end. So that's providing a bit of a plan for you, a bit of a structure that you can deviate from if you want to a little bit, but I think it'll work for me as I write my ending. In terms of keys to success today, make sure you follow or try to follow the structure strip as you can for your story plot, so you don't lose sight of where you're going with it. Mixing narrative and dialogue. Narrative explains the story, so it's sort of your normal story writing where you describe surroundings, describing what happens, and also on my scaffold sheet I've got some sentence openers you can use, so it's not always just the. You can link it together with some sentence openers. And dialogue is obviously the speech that interacts between the two characters, such as move that story forwards, and with that, accurate punctuation, inverted commas around the speech, new speaker, new line, slang, contractions, pauses. Slang is like kind of the way people speak. Contracted words are I'm, weave, so those apostrophes. And little pauses, because when someone's speaking, they pause. And we've done a lot on dialogue over the last few weeks. Room 13, we did lessons on it and things like that. So it's just making sure you're accurate with that. And your stretch, try and vary your punctuation use and use it accurately and use it for effect. I know some of you have been using the slanted writing to try and emphasize certain parts of dialogue and things. It's quite an effective way of doing that. And really, the main one is just maintain that high quality from start to finish. Vocabulary choices, really thinking about what you're trying to do with your writing, and not just get from start to finish, but take care of every single sentence so it's the best it can be. I also think what I should put on those another stretches is continual editing back all the way through, fixing and adjusting all the way through, even as you're going, not just leaving it to the final edit at the end. Okay, so that's a brief introduction to the task. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to model to you what my ending is going to look like. You can watch me do it, I'll talk through it, but please don't feel that you have to follow exactly the same sort of style as mine or the same things happen, but they might just give you some ideas for how you do your one. Also, please feel free, this, you are the author in this. Yes, you're writing from the perspective of the wolf. Yes, you're doing a similar activity to what I'm modelling, but you don't have to do exactly what I do, and you don't need to use all the same phrases, otherwise it's just kind of copying out what I do. Try and make it your own version, play around with it, and you know, we're year 6 now. We've got the skills of writing. We just need to apply them to the best of our ability, applying all those skills we've learned all the way through school. All right. So this is what I've drafted out so far. On day 1, I drafted that part with the opening. Then yesterday's lesson, I did the part where Wolf and Red meet, and then I'm just going to read to you the final part because this will lead into going towards Grandma's cottage, and it says. Fortunately, I knew the little girl's grandmother rather well. It was time to that's where you got to edit. Set off for Grandma's cottage. So I'm on my way to Grandma's cottage. There is a scaffold sheet to use today. Lots of sentence openers. Always look back to those if any of those come in useful, or they give you some ideas. Sentence openers. Vocabulary bank. When you're struggling for words for red, there's some useful adjectives to describe that sort of character of red. When you're writing speech, if you don't want to use the word said and you want to use a synonym, there's some ideas there. And I've got some synonyms for a lie, because later on we're going to talk about the fact that this has all been a big lie. The story that's told in the fairy tales is not the real truth. It's a fib, it's a lie, it's a false truth, a manipulation of the truth, a pure fabrication of the truth, an invention of the imagination. There's just some nice phrases you could use in your one. Your part 3, the finale. You need to write the ending. You arrive at Grandma's house, you explain the situation, you play a joke on Red, it backfires, you explain that the stories they told about eating Red and Grandma, they were all just a lie. And I put the key success and the structure strip to use if you want to use that as well. So I would have that loaded up on screen as I'm writing my version. Okay, here's my one, guys. I'll load it up nice and big. So I'm on my way to Grandma's cottage. So after a long trek through the woods, comma, that's the clause, isn't it? That's the opening clause. I finally made my way to the grandmother's cottage. I could have just said I finally made my way to the grandmother's cottage, but I put sentence in there. After a long trek through the woods, some detail. My mind was ablaze with confusion. Why did this child have to be quite so rude. I'm always kind of in this fiction, I'm always kind of speaking to the reader. That's what lots of authors do. Knock, 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 knock. Okay. So I'm going to have some speech now. I'm going to meet the grandmother. Right. Oh, hello there, Wolfie. Give me a capital F for his name, proper noun. How are you? And remember what I've said all the way through? Question mark. That's why I keep seeing a lot of missing question marks for questions. How are you? Answered Grandma, because she's answering the door. Comma. I could just put full stop, but I'm going to add a bit of detail. Comma. As chirpy and cheerful as ever, because we get on, me and Grandma. We're all right. The wolf gets on with the grandma. Right? It's not like it is in the story. Hi there. Well, I'd love to say, is that contraction? I'd love to say I was well, but I need some pauses for effect. To be perfectly honest, pause again. And do that again. I think that works there. I'm afraid it's not been the best of days. Truth be told, those pauses are effective because that's how you'd feel. It's a bit awkward, isn't it, explaining this? I replied, and I'm going to add detail again, worn out from my long journey, or my long walk through the woods. Okay, so just adding detail all the time. Now, what some people do all the time is they just keep then going back and forth with lots of dialogue back and forth. That's okay at times, but it can get a little bit boring just hearing speech. So instead, I'm going to do a bit of narrative here, and I'm going to use a sentence opener. Let's look at my scaffold. All of a sudden, moments later, I've got a good one actually. I've got one that's kind of related to that. At that point, and I'm just going to describe what happens as opposed to just going through all of the dialogue, because that can get a little bit boring if a reader. At that point, I proceeded to inform Grandma all about my encounter with, I'm going to call it Evil Red Riding Hood, Dash, her beloved granddaughter. There's a useful spelling for you if you use that word, granddaughter. I had to tell her the whole story. Let's go for some clever Patricia. Every detail. I use a colon now. I'm going to expand on that. I had to tell her the whole story, every detail, the revolting manner in which she spoke to me. I was going to put some parentheses. I was put some parentheses in which she read, that is, dash parenthesis there. She read, that is, spoke to me, and the devious tricks she played on me. So what I've done there by doing a bit of narrative is I've not explained the whole conversation back and forth using dialogue. I've used some narrative to explain what's happening, okay, to mix it up. Now I'm going to say what she says after that. Oh my. Now she's a bit nervous. She's going to pause. I'm, contracted word there, I'm so very sorry. What might you say? Gosh, dash. She can be such a madam, can't she? There you go. That's kind of the things someone would say. They're embarrassed about their granddaughter's behaviour. Muttered. That's kind of the way she speaks. Muttered. Grandma, and add details to the way she says it. Clearly, distressed. Oh, distressed by the. I was going to say by the actions of it. I'm going to use a good word. Inexcusable. Excusable. I've gone wrong with the spelling there. Inexcusable actions of her supposedly kind nature. There you go, hyphenated word. Kind-natured granddaughter. See, I'm going a little bit more speech. What she might say. I really need to have a word with her. So grandma's at pause. Now, a good writer, some writers might just say, said Grandma, but a good writer will add in details and will think about the vocabulary. Clearly distressed, okay, by the inexcusable actions, supposedly kind-natured. It's the words that make writing so effective, okay, and thinking carefully about those words. That's what makes writing so effective. Now I'm going to go back to narrative again. It was at that point that I decided to inform her of my plan. No, actually, my ingenious plan. Okay, and again, words again making such a difference. Nothing too sinister, of course, because we're not a bad guy, are we? Nothing too sinister, but a joke. To make her see the errors of her ways. It's just a nice joke. Actually, I thought a bit of parenthesis. A joke, brackets, of sorts. Kind of a joke. Of sorts, to make her see the errors of the way. And this way, I'm going to do what it does in the story, where, you know, Wolf does get dressed up as Grandma, but it's all just a bit of a joke to get back at her. I'm going to tell Grandma how I'm going to do it. I'll pretend. I'm you. Right, so this is the idea. Give her the fright of her life. I sniggered. I'm added it already, so I'm thinking ahead now. Already picturing the hilarity that was sure to soon ensue. There's a complicated sentence. Already picturing the hilarity that was sure to soon ensue. Soon, or maybe change that around. Soon to ensue. Ensue means that it's going to happen in the future. So I thought just a joke. It's supposed to be quite funny. All right. Back to, so I've done lots of integrating dialogue with narrative. There's dialogue, there's speech, and then there's some explanation of what's happening. So that's narrative. Okay. And we're going back to dialogue there. Now I'm going to do some more narrative, and I'm just going to say, I was going to say time passes. An hour or so passed, or a little while later. An hour or so passed before Red finally arrived at the cottage. One thing I did notice, a few of you, when you were writing, you weren't putting capital letters on Red and Little Red Riding Hood, so make sure she always has a capital letter. I know she's not a great person, but she deserves a capital letter on her name. Semicolon. Yeah, so use some high quality punctuation. Let's link a clause back. It was time to put my cunning plan into action. Okay, that sentence, an hour or so passed before Red finally arrived at the cottage, and then this sentence, it was time to put my cunning plan into action. They both link together, so those clauses link together with the semicolon. In my computer's put it right. It was time to put my cunning plan into action. So I dressed as Grandma. I'm going to use that as my sentence opener. Dressed as Grandma. Hiding in the bed. Then my double sentence opener. Dressed as Grandma, hiding in the bed. I awaited Red's arrival. Dash. I'm going to pretend that I'm going to refer to Grandma. That's her actual name, so I'll give her a proper name. Grandma, because I've not actually named her in this story, but we'll pretend that we refer to her as Grandma. Grandma hidden out of view in the wardrobe, of course. So she's just hiding. She's in on the joke. Now, what I'm going to do is kind of what happens in the original story, so you can use some of this yourself. So, knock, knock. Red's arriving. Knock, knock. Knock, knock. To give you, just flick back to your scaffold. Just to go, that structure strip that I've talked about arriving at Grandma's house. I've spoke to Grandma, explained what's happened, and explained my plan, and now Red's arriving. So you can keep referring back to that as your structure. That's what that structure is. That's where we're at. Okay? Knock, 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 knock. Okay, this is me speaking. Come in. ... my dear. And this is me speaking as the wolf, pretend I'm the grandma, like happens in the story. I said in what can only be described as an Oscar is in like acting skill, like the acting award, Oscar worthy, I'll put that as a hyphen, Oscar worthy rendition of Grandma's voice. Oscar worthy. There you go. All right, so we're arriving in, so building it up into the room. Red stepped. You could just say Red stepped into the room, but I think fancy year 6 writers, we can play around with that. Into the room, comma, Red step. Bit of narrative. Now I'm going to do exactly what it does in the story. I'm going to magpie the lines from the story, which are, my grandma, what big eyes you have. You should all know this from the child fairy tale. All the better to see you with, my dear. ... I replied. Okay, so this is from the original story. Right, so we're playing a trick on her. My grandma, what big, I don't know if you can remember what comes next, what big ear, yeah, big ears you have, ... Oh no, exclamation mark. All the better to hear you with, my dear. I quite like repeating the my dear as well, because it makes it, gives that repetition for effect. I'm not going to say I replied, so I'm going to say I said, I'll give some detail to it. I'm going to say I'm cackling to myself, because I find this quite funny. Cackling to myself, dash, my plan was working a treat. Alright, so everything's going well at the minute. My grandma, what big teeth you have! Exclamation mark. All from the story. And then what Wolf says, if you remember from when you were little, he says, all the better to eat you with, my dear. I roared. Now, in the original story, if we remember, they're saying that Wolf eats Red and Grandma. Not true. All right. So, what I'm going to do here, I don't recommend using "and" very often as start sentence, but it does work for this. And then, I can't put it. And then, in that instant, ... I lunged forwards. Now, what I'm going to say, my little version of this is, so we're at this point on the scaffold. We've done the what big eyes, what big ears, what big teeth, and then the woodcutter arrives. So I've lunged forward here, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, unfortunately, comma, so sense I'm going to, actually no, unfortunately, let's do a bit of parenthesis. Unfortunately for me, comma, I guess. That's my parenthesis. Unfortunately, in that very same instant, he arrives. And they don't know who he is yet, but I'm going to build this up. Yes, him, the woodcutter. All right, so building it. I do not like this guy. Now, the woodcutter's going to say something. He's going to say, run, Red, run. He roars. So he's obviously telling Red to get away. He thinks that I'm some sort of, I'm going to murder Red and eat Red. That's not true, okay? And I'm going to do a little play on words here. The Saviour, they called him. Because in the stories, the woodcutter is seen as the saviour. I'm going to put that in italics, the saviour. They make out that he's so great and I'm so bad. It's not true. And now, so there's got this idea. So what's happened here is I've played this joke on Red. It's backfired because the woodcutter's walked in. He thinks that I'm actually really going to try and eat her. I'm not. I'm just playing a silly joke because she was a nasty little brat. But he's come in and he's saved the day. And he's told Red to run away. All right? So what I'm going to do, I'm at this point now where I need to explain. I never ate anyone. It was all a lie. So I sit here today. That's my final part. So I'm going to say this. What did I do at that point, you ask? Question. Well, I ran away. I scarpered is a good verb. I scarpered, of course. Left. Ran off. That's a variation in sentence length. I had no interest in eating anyone. I didn't. I had no interest, a bit of repetition there, I had no interest in actually harming Red. And please, I'm going to use and again, but only for effect. And please, for the love of all the wonderful creatures in the forest, ... I'm going to speak directly to the reader. Do you honestly believe I wanted to eat Grandma? I'm going to tell the reader now. It was nothing more than a joke. ... a harmless joke. And I'm going to speak, so I was kind of saying to you, this is what happened, this is the truth. I say they, I'm going to refer to Grandmother Red and the woodcutter. They spun their own tale, of course, the one we all know. Semicolon. The stories you read as a young child. Dash. They are nothing but, now this is a word for a lie. They are nothing but a manipulation of the truth on that one. A manipulation of the truth. Actually, I'm going to do manipulation, not ton. A fib. a lie, a false truth. Bit of repetition for effect there. So, my final part now. Here I am. Here, comma, I sit alone, all alone, alone in the woods. Lots of short little clauses, short little one-word sentences. Thinking back to that fateful day, semicolon, the day she, okay, dashes, not brackets, that scheming, devious little girl, comma between my list of adjectives, scheming, devious little girl, she ruined my life. There you go. There's my ending. That is the end of the story. And I am all done. Okay. And then you see I've followed that structure strip through. Now, guys, what I want you to do is your ending. It can be similar to mine in structure if you want. I'd follow the structure strip through. I'd keep referring back to some of the things on the scaffold here, looking at your key success to check it through, and make it absolutely amazing ending, and play around it. If you want to use the same sort of phrase that you used in the original story for that bit there, please do. And you can write it in a way that suits you, but that one works for me. And if you want to use some of my phrases, steal some of my phrases, please feel free. But also, please don't just copy mine word for word, because that wouldn't really work, would it? All right, guys, have lots of fun with that. It's a really nice, fun bit of writing, something a little bit different, a year 6-ified take and twist on the fairy tale Little Red Riding Hood. All right, guys, enjoy it. I'll see you later. Bye bye.